I feel like creating cat today. Give me a cat. Give it 4 legs, some fur, fangs, and some surprises. Its eyes should shine in the dark, and it should always land on its feet.
Oh, sure.
Give cat 6 eyes.
We only have 2 eyes left.
2 eyes. I like that.
Cranium, 23 Pantenes. Jaw, 12 Photox. No eyebrows. Nice. Notice how the heavy lids give it an arrogant yet warm expression.
Nice job, Staff. You've designed the perfect animal, cat. However, there is one finishing touch. Give it 9 lives.
Wow. 9 lives.
Everyone else gets only 1 life.
Well, let's just say it would make a great plot for a story.
Hello, thank you for clicking on this video. I recently took a class in school that is all about comics. One of the final assignments for this class was to do a brief presentation on one comic that we did not read in this class and why we think it should be included in the syllabus next year. My topic was Garfield, because this was a comic that we did not read in class, and that is very important and near and dear to me. So this is the director's cut of that presentation that I did. I will be including a few video clips that I had to cut for time for the presentation in class. So you all are really lucking out by getting the full experience. So, what the heck is Garfield? Next slide. Well, Garfield is an American comic strip written by Jim Davis, and is one of the most widely syndicated comic strips in the world. It follows the sardonic antics of its title character, a lazy orange cat, as he interacts with, teases, and complains about his owner, John, and the house's dog, Odie. Next slide. So here's a brief biography on Jim Davis. Jim Davis is a cartoonist who set out to create a good marketable character. That is, Jim Davis wanted to make a cartoon character that he could make a lot of fat stacks off of. And he succeeded. Jim Davis is now worth over $800 million. So, good job, Jim Davis. Attaboy. Next slide. Here's a brief quote from an interview that Jim Davis did, I think in a while ago. I don't know when this interview was done, but it showcases this idea that Jim Davis wanted to make Garfield a commercial character. Next slide, please. You can see kind of how Garfield's marketability has evolved since his inception as well. With this demonstration of how this character has changed since his birth in 1978. Next slide, please. So, I would like to briefly examine Garfield in media now. Here are a couple classic examples of the antics that Garfield gets into in his daily comic strips. Pretty wacky and funny, right? Next slide, please. It's not to be outdone by these Sunday strips, which showcase the strip in a longer format. I particularly like this one because this Garfield is showcasing some pretty cool art with the Wizard Garfield. Next slide, please. Now, in all its time, Garfield is not without its controversy. Controversy? controversy. Here is one of the most controversial Garfield strips. This strip garnered a lot of criticism from fans and non-fans alike, as it aired on the same day as Veterans Day in 2010. You can see that the spider is being squished by Garfield, and then the spiders are celebrating it as a National Stupid Day. This sparked a lot of outrage in people, but Davis apologized and said that the comic was poorly timed, going on to say that the strips are written about a year in advance, and that he had no intention of offending anybody, and that in fact Jim Davis's brother and son are also veterans. Thank you to all the Davis men who have served our country. Obviously, you are probably familiar with Garfield in films as well, with the Garfield live-action films. But did you know that there are also some straight-to-DVD cartoon adaptations films? That's Garfield Gets Real in 2007, Garfield's Fun Fest in 2008, and Garfield's Pet Force on June 16th, 2009. That's my birthday. Next slide, please. Garfield has also appeared in several televised adaptations. There's Garfield and Friends, which is a 2D animated series, and is kind of how we ended up with Bill Murray voicing Garfield in the Garfield movies. So that's a fun little fact. There's also the CGI animated Garfield show and the French cartoon series Garfield Originals, which has premiered in 2019 and is still running strong today. I'm particularly fond of the French adaptation. It's all physical gags, so despite me not knowing any French, I'm still able to laugh at and appreciate this iteration of Garfield. Next slide, please. There are several primetime specials of Garfield. Here they all are. One that I would like to particularly focus on is Garfield, His 9 Lives, which is based off of a book of the same name. This book and film are...
In my 7th life, I was a laboratory animal. To this day, every time I see a test tube, I throw up.
Hold on to that cat good and tight now, Larry. Easy now, fella. Easy there.
They depict Garfield in a very different light. And this is a Garfield that is a far cry from any other Garfield that we have seen or will see since this. It's an anthology piece that goes through Garfield's previous 9 lives, kind of playing off of that cats having 9 life folklore. So it follows Garfield recounting some of his previous lives, and some of them are fairly dark. Some of them are fairly childish. All of them are a great time. There's a really interesting Family Guy.
Come on, they're not gonna let you ride that ride either. You're overweight.
I'm not overweight. I'm under tall. Garfield, 1982. Speaking of which, you want to read something seriously messed up? Go out and pick up Garfield, His 9 Lives. An absolutely bizarre, fucked up piece of fiction. Half of them aren't funny. They're just artsy, scary, and disturbing. Why did you do Garfield, His 9 Lives, Jim Davis? Why did you do that dark, freaky one where Garfield kills that old woman? You want to see a picture? Look at this. This is an actual picture from the book. Hey, Nice to see you, Garfield. What's the matter? You a little agitated? About to commit murder? Come on, Jim.
So, as you can see, this is Garfield in a light you have never seen him before. A very wild and strange Garfield, and one certainly worth more of our attention. But Garfield appears more than just in print and on screen. He's also made it to the limelight of Broadway.
Everyone's favorite Tubby Tabby bounds off the comics page and onto the coterie stage this summer. Garfield, the musical with catitude.
Here are some stills from the Garfield musical, from a production that was performed in February of 2021. I think it's really interesting because you can see how masks have been incorporated into the costume design of some of the characters. And it has some very interesting effects in the more anthropomorphic characters such as Garfield or Odie, but I find it to be downright disturbing and scary on John Arbuckle. Next slide, please. But Garfield also appears in more interactive mediums as well, such as the several Garfield video games. These are just a few notable selections, and some of my favorites, such as Garfield Kart and Garfield: A Tale of Two Kitties for the Nintendo DS. There are dozens more, not listed here. Next slide, please. Garfield has also dipped into the food industry. Here's Jim Davis with a few words on that.
Well, Garfield came along and defended our right to eat lasagna, skip the gym, and sleep until noon. In a sense, he was a rebel. Which brings us to Nathan Masry, another rebel, and co-founder of a new food experience that Garfield would love, Garfield Eats. It's an easy and entertaining way to get delicious food in a hurry and be entertained at the same time. Nathan calls it an entergaging app, entertaining and engaging. It's the world's first entergaging mobile app for the restaurant business.
Garfield Eats is currently available in Dubai, Toronto, Dublin, and London. Next slide, please. I look at these slices of Garfield-shaped pizza and I feel nothing but joy. I sincerely wish Garfield Eats were available in America. Next slide, please. So, to wrap up our Garfield and media portion, Garfield is a monolith. I have so far in this PowerPoint glossed over 169 different books published by Paws Incorporated. And this only scratches the surface of Garfield merchandising. There are Garfield plushes, and Garfield tattoos, and Garfield clothing, and Garfield everything, it seems. Garfield is a cultural phenomenon. He's an entity that has been around for 50 years. Garfield is on similar levels of marketing as, characters such as Mickey Mouse, who also got their start in the comic book industry. But unlike Mickey Mouse, Garfield doesn't have a whole incorporated company to lean on for his brand image. Garfield is carrying the Garfield image just by his own name alone. Garfield is a startling example of how comics run through consumerism and come out on the other side. And he holds a mirror up to American society, showing those who consume an aspects of their own day-to-day lives, which they obviously see something of themselves in. Next, we are going to be taking looks at how Garfield has influenced genre. Next slide, please. So, as we move on through the PowerPoint presentation, keep in mind that these are very interesting examples surrounding Garfield. And ask yourself if these things are spoofs or something else. Fan bastardization of Garfield as a means of retaliating against how he has been commercialized by Jim Davis. Think of these things as a means of fans taking back Garfield. And ask yourself, at what point does irony transcend into a genuine endeavor and love for the original character of Garfield. It's one thing to have Jim Davis try to sell us Garfield on tampons and a Garfield cappuccino. It's another thing for fans to say, if you can put Garfield on that, I can put Garfield on this. And I think that's something to keep in mind as we move on. Next slide, please. So the first example I want to look at is from a YouTube channel called Lasagna Cat. This is a very literal live-action interpretation of individual comics followed by some kind of creative and humorous sketch revolving around the strip. I'm going to be playing the clip.
I'm going to spend the evening trying out different kinds of shampoo.
And one kind of furniture polish.
So now you have a general sense of how Lasagna Cat spoofs Garfield. Next slide, please. There's also Garfield. This is a YouTube phenomenon that started in 2013. Garfield uses a text-to-voice speech and follows a very formulaic and general premise.
Stuffed in your face as usual.
I gotta have a good meal.
Garfield, you fat cat. You are so big and fat. Why are you so fat?
The beauty about Garfield is that it uses text-to-voice speech and is often animated in Microsoft Paint. This is a means of animating and producing Garfield content that anybody could theoretically do. And because the amateurish style is part of the genre, there is a very low barrier of entry for this series. Quite simply, this is a means of fans taking Garfield and animating him with their 21st century sensibilities. Next slide, please. There's also the Gorefield subgenre. And this is a type of amalgamation between creepypastas and Garfield. It combines Garfield strips with a lot of elements of horror, and it can be roughly traced back to around 2013, but really gained popularity in 2018. One of my favorite SCPs is also a subgenre, or falls within the category of Gorefield. This whole subgenre of cursed cartoons that we see popularized today can be traced back to Gorefield. These are strips that take elements of beloved cartoons and twist them in the horror genre. Some popular examples include the Bikini Bottom Horror and Meat Canyon, but there are countless others. Next slide, please. In 2018, the I'm Sorry John subreddit was created, serving as a dedicated space to post and share Gorefield content. Next slide, please. The beauty about Garfield, and something which Lasagna Cat alludes to in their series, is just the inevitability of Garfield. Garfield exists as something more than what he is. Garfield is more so an idea than he is a character at this point. Garfield is what happens when commercialization and cartoons meet. There always will be a Garfield. There will always be a Garfield-like character. If Jim Davis hadn't come along and gotten this idea, then eventually, without a doubt, some other creator would have capitalized upon this desire and this market for a cartoon character with sarcastic sass. I would like to conclude with an analogy. When I was a young boy, my great-grandmother would clip every Garfield strip from the daily newspaper and save them in a scrapbook and give me that scrapbook every year on my birthday. That was always one of my favorite birthday presents, flipping open that scrapbook and reading the hilarious Garfield strips that I loved so much as a child. Garfield is beloved by millions, and Garfield is everywhere, while being nowhere simultaneously. Garfield will be there when I die, staring back at me from the yawning void. Thank you, Garfield. I love you, Garfield. Next slide, please. Here's when I would, in class, save room for questions. But this is a YouTube video, and you probably cannot ask me any questions. So I will just say thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. And if you do have any questions, leave them in the comments below.
You say you were born under a bad sign, got a reason to cry. The bad signs I was born under fill up the sky. Yeah, I'm a blues cat, and I'm broke from paying my dues. 'Cause when you got 9 lives